Welcome back. I hope you all had a great lunch session and good networking. We are now about to begin with the next session, that is e-governance, issues, challenges and opportunities. For this, we have the session chair, we have Shri Sanjay Jaju, Secretary IT, Governor of Andhra Pradesh. I request Jaju sir to kindly come on the dais. A big hand for Shri Sanjay Jaju. We also have with us Shri Yudhvir Malik, Financial Commissioner and Principal Secretary, Electronics and Information Technology, Government of Haryana. We have Shri Malik's vision, and he has been sharing his wisdom with us, and we are privileged to have his presence again for our session. We have with us Shri Vimal Waklu, Chairman and Managing Director of Telecommunications Consultants India Limited. Welcome on the dais, sir. We also have with us Shri Abhay Kumar, State Informatics Officer, National Informatics Center, Jammu and Kashmir. And we have Mr. Vikas Utreja, Business Manager of Juniper Networks. May we have Mr. Utreja, he shall be joining us soon. And we also have with us Mr. J.P. Pandey, Senior Vice President of Presto Info Solutions Private Limited. Mr. J.P. Pandey. Thank you, sir. I now hand over the session to the session chair, Shri Jaju.
Yeah. So I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the post-lunch session, and the post-lunch session is always the toughest session, and but I'm sure that the discussion that we're going to be having now will keep you awake and keep you ready for the tea that follows after this session. Friends, on my left is Mr. Malik, who is Principal Secretary for the Electronics and Information Technology in Government of Haryana. To my right, I have Mr. Vimal Waklu, who is the Chairman and Managing Director of Telecommunications Consultants India Limited. To his right, we have Mr. Abhay Kumar, who is the State Informatics Officer for NIC Jammu and Kashmir. And I also have Vikas Utreja, who is the Business Manager of Jupiter or Juniper. What's that? Juniper. It's Juniper Networks? Juniper Networks. So we have people from industry as well as from the government. And the topic is e-governance, issues, challenges, and opportunities. And to set the ball rolling, actually, I wanted to make use of this opportunity to present to you the Andhra Pradesh's Mi-Seva experience. Secretary DIT, Mr. Satyanarayana, who has technically mothered and fathered this project, started this project in Andhra Pradesh, and I'm very happy to see him here. And I'll present a couple of slides which will give you an overview of what this project is. And I'm sure this project also will throw in a lot of critical questions pertaining to this particular session. And we'll try and take those questions and take the presentations from our co-panelists. So I'll present a couple of slides, and then I'll come over to first to the industry partners, and then to the government panelists. Can I just go there? Sorry? Yeah. Will it come on its own? Yeah. Friends, I'll not get into individual slides, but this is fairly important. When we are talking of e-governance and good governance, what's the situation? What's the current situation, and what actually catalyzes e-governance activities? Now, this is a scenario in almost any government office right now, not just in our country, but possibly anywhere else in the world as well. That you have a lot of physical application forms, there are a lot of multiple visits required, retrieval is a time-consuming process, and all the records are in the paper format. And what it actually leads to is frustrated and displeased citizens on the one hand, and waste of financial and other resources. And what do we mean by e-governance? So what we are trying to do is we are trying to move from the earlier approach into an approach wherein you have online applications. That means you have enabled your services, service delivery systems. You're also making use of mobile phones because they are now becoming the in thing. You have standardized the processes, because unless and until you standardize processes, a computer will not be able to replicate the human effort which is involved in disposing of a particular application. And by doing all this, what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a happy citizen, and at the same time you're trying to make processing become easier for the officers who are involved in this particular process. As far as the MeSeva project is concerned in Andhra Pradesh, we launched it as a small initiative in one district on 4th November 2011. And the idea was to provide an end-to-end solution to the delivery of the G2C services. And I'm very happy to inform you that starting from one district, 10 services, 2 departments, today in MeSeva, in just about a year and a half, now we have reached a situation wherein we have 140 services pertaining to 15 departments all across the state. We started with some 200 centers. Now we have 6,000 plus centers in the rural areas and 350 centers in the urban areas, catering to the needs of the population of the state. And some of the salient features of the MeSeva project, it all started with a kind of a legal basis to the entire approach that we followed, wherein in our state we issued the Andhra Pradesh Electronic Service Delivery Rules as part of the IT Act, something which was actually the brainchild of the secretary. He had drafted these rules for a particular state as part of the NISG, and then we took those rules and quickly adapted them to the needs of the state. And by doing this, what we were able to do is provide a backbone, a legal backbone to the issuance of digitally signed certificates. And to create a system wherein the nitty-gritties which are required to be put in place when we issue digitally signed papers or digitally signed certificates, all those nitty-gritties and the safeguards were all built into the electronic service delivery rules. One very important feature of the MeSeva process was the categorization of the G2C services, wherein it was felt that there are many e-governance services which all go through a workflow. So that means what happens is citizen comes and makes a request, then it goes to that particular office where there is a small workflow involved, and then he again has to come back to the same place where he gave his application to collect the sanction letter or a permit or a certificate. So how do we create a situation wherein we get this workflow out, and some of these workflow based services could be converted into across the counter services? And in that, the concept which was utilized was bulk digital signing of the databases. For example, if you have the birth and death certificates, instead of an individual coming and making a request for a birth certificate, and then later on the workflow is getting followed in a particular government office, we take the entire birth and death database, and that database is digitally signed with the digital signature certificate of the concerned official, and by doing that, you are able to issue these birth and death certificates across the counter. Out of the 140 services that I was telling you, 1/3 of these services are broadly across the counter. So this was an essential change which was made in the earlier system that we used to have. Of course, we had the another concept which was a single entry portal, as I was mentioning in the morning, so that the citizen interface, the entry and the exit of the citizen is through the MiSeva system. For any government service, he just approaches the MiSeva center, there is an entry point, and the exit also is from the MiSeva system. Digitally signed, digital signatures. An important problem which we used to face earlier was that an application was though received in a common service center and it was forwarded to a concerned government office. The problem was that there's still a manual workflow being followed in a government office. So what actually used to happen was, even though a paper is given in electronic format, the entire process used to be ink driven. And because of this, it was impossible to provide services within the limited time frame. So what we actually did in MiSeva is that no service is being given without digital signatures. So for example, now all the tehsildars in our state, or all the station house officers of the police department, or the municipal commissioners, all of them were given digital signature certificates, and all the certificates and sanctions that we give through MiSeva are issued with the help of the digital signature certificate. Besides this, there are other issues of real-time monitoring by making use of mobile updates and stuff like that. As I was telling you, 125 services, with the number is 141 today, because 16 more services have been added in the last 3 days, and we have completed more than 1 crore 61 lakh transactions in the last about a year, I would say. And every day we are now clocking more than 70,000 to 80,000 transactions. And this is how this entire thing has started off on a low scale, and now if you look at it, the project has stabilized. And in fact, this is the overall count. If you look at it, any department which has citizen centricity has been brought into the MiSeva fold. Revenue department, between the tehsildars, the SDMs, the collectors, the joint collectors, we have more than 55 services of the revenue department right now. And similarly, registration department, 12 services. And shortly we are going to be starting a service of doing the pre-registration work and slot booking through this system, so that the entire process of registration is streamlined and people do not face harassment at the hands of the sub-registrars and the departmental officials. A lot of municipality services, because again a cutting-edge department. Interestingly, we have police department 4 services. Now in our state, for example, if somebody loses a document or a cell phone or a passport, any articles or a document being lost, they need not go to a police station. They can just go to a MiSeva center, file an FIR at the center, and it gets electronically transmitted to the concerned station house officer who disposes it off in his own domain. Similarly, we have services from power distribution, transport, education, whole range of services. The idea of this entire thing is any department that has citizen centricity should bring their services through the MiSeva system. Citizen will not go to a government office. He will only go to a MiSeva center. And because all these MiSeva centers, as I mentioned in the morning, they are all common service centers. They are run by technically unemployed youth. They're their own peers in the village. So it makes the overall process much more friendlier for the common citizen. This is a list of, as I mentioned to you, in the next 6 months, we're planning to add 160 services. The entire bouquet will be about 300 G2C services, all being issued through the digital signature certificates of the concerned functionary. And at this point, I'd like to close and give you an essential feedback into what were the challenges we faced in the MiSeva project, and how we mitigated those challenges, and what are the lessons to be learnt. And the biggest challenge to my mind is the turf. Now what actually happens is, when you have this kind of an approach, the departments have to agree to cede power. Because when you're trying to take away these services which are being delivered through those offices, and you're trying to put them into public domain, the problem that you face is the departmental resistance and the resistance to change and the entire process. To my mind, this was mitigated. Yeah. Yeah. What actually happens is, we don't amend the laws. For example, let's say we have to, as far as the revenue, let's say we call it, in our state we call it Adangal, which is actually the copy of the land records. Now, they are done as per the Land Records Act that we have in the state. Only thing what we have done is we have automated the entire process which is involved. So we have not changed the act or the process involved, but we have automated that entire process. And yeah, that also is required in some cases. For example, we actually want, as far as the police department services is concerned, we actually wanted to even do the normal FIR filing also in the police station, which is right now being done in the police station. But I think as per the CRPC, it has to be filed before the station house officer. So what we have tried to do is we have taken away that part, but these missing articles and document part has actually been taken into the Mi-Seva system. And the ESD rules that we have formulated in our state makes it mandatory for the government departments, all the government departments which have citizen centricity, the ESD rules which we have formulated makes it mandatory for them to come to the electronic system in a year's time. So it's a kind of a mandate which is given to all the departments. So what actually happens is the kind of challenges which I was talking about, the challenges that we faced. Challenge number 2 was the capacity building. Now, you may have whatever infrastructure in place, but unless and until you build the capacities of the individuals who run those systems, be it in the government or the Mi-Seva centers which are run by these unemployed youth, the project will not achieve desired outcomes. So the lesson number 2 is, before we embark on similar projects, we need to build the capacities both of the people who are running the kiosk as well as the people who are going to be delivering these services. And the last issue would be the optimal utilization of the infrastructure that we create and which all the states have now created in terms of the state data center, the statewide area network, and the common service centers. So to my mind, these are the 3 broad challenges. We have an eminent panel here. We'll try and take feedback from the panelists. And after that, we'll try and sum this up and leave the floor open for questions, answers, as well as some discussion points which may come out of this particular session. So I'd now like to request the panelists from the industry, Mr. Vikas, who is the business manager from Juniper Networks, to come and... are you there? Okay, right. Would you like to come there?
Hi, I'm Vikas this side from Juniper Networks. The presentation showed very interesting, the kind of work which is being done, bringing the government closer to the people. Now, being an IT company, good afternoon everybody, I'm Vikas from Juniper Networks, and I'll try to share what Juniper is doing so that we can bring the government, the work that they are doing, closer to the public. So first of all, let us try to understand what exactly information communication technologies can do for e-governance. Right? As he said, there are so many applications today which are being done by the government. Primarily, they are into G2C. There is another government to government, government to business. Now, these applications are typically hosted in data centers, which could be part of state data centers or NIC data centers, and the information flows either through SWANS, NICNet, NKN, or even the internet in so many cases. Now the challenge which is being faced is that the accessibility to these applications is limited only to those people. The accessibility of these applications is limited to selected number of people. Anyone and everyone is not able to access the information as of now. Now, how do we step in to bring the people closer to the government? Now, these are the certain initiatives which are happening. These are the major trends which are happening in the market today. The first one is that earlier people were unemployed. Now the literacy rate is improving. The skills and knowledge are coming to the people. There are more number of educational institutes, engineering colleges, etc. Effectively, which means that the youth today has more resources to gain knowledge than earlier. The increased penetration of internet, thanks to the laptops, smartphones, tablets. Most of the people today in cities have access to the internet, as well as in the rural areas. The massive developments in the IT industry, again, I'm talking about the hardware companies like Apple, the kind of devices they have brought to the market. These devices are bridging the gap. Now, another important trend which is happening is that these services are moving to the cloud. And it is completely justified. Why do we move to the cloud? There are certain business needs. First of all, we need to bring down the cost of service. That's how we'd be able to bring services at a lower cost to the people. How do we do that? We consolidate data centers. We have business continuity applications. We have security compliances. Security actually would not bring down the cost, but it ensures that all the compliances are met. New deployments. Now, earlier what used to happen, there was a dedicated server, dedicated machine for dedicated applications. But now, we are talking about service-oriented architecture, wherein everything is delivered as a service, just like MeSeva. They are delivering service to the customers. The customer is not bothered about the kind of infrastructure they have deployed, am I right, sir? The customer is only bothered about the time he spends at a MeSeva service center to get his work done. Servers are being virtualized, storage is virtualized, so almost everything today is virtualized. Now this is a typical model of e-governance. There is services on the data center, on the DR, and there are clients. How do we connect them? We connect them using global high-performance network. So this is what we bring to the table, high-performance network. Now coming back to the data center, what exactly does a data center want? They have, the priority for a data center is speed. Whatever information is required should come up quickly. There should be no latency, very low jitter. The scale should be massive. The way they have, the way one of the projects just shown, they have grown from 2 to today more than 60,000 transactions per day. This is what is needed. You should be able to scale on the fly. And of course, the cost should be controlled. If 2 transactions cost 2 rupees, 60,000 transactions should not cost 60,000. They should cost perhaps 10 or maybe 20. What is the change that has happened? Now earlier, this was the architecture. There was one person sitting with a machine, interacting with the data center. All the information used to flow, 95% of the information used to flow between the person sitting here with the machine and the data center. He would access servers, database. What is happening now? The client sends one command and the data center will do 75% of the job. Just think of Google. We enter one string. Google's database would do 75% of the work. 75% of the communication would happen within the servers placed in the Google's data center. Same for each and every application that we see today. 25% of the traffic flows from the person to the data center and 75% within the data center. Now, how do we define the ideal network? Now, this is a typical tree configuration. This was invented more than 15, 20 years ago. There used to be a core switch, a distribution, access layer, and then the machines, which could be storage, servers, etc. What Juniper has done, we have removed these layers and created one single network so that each and every machine is connected as if they are connected directly to each other. It's flat, one-to-one. The devices may be many, but to the user, the experience, the feel is like it's one single device, one switch. And this makes data centers very simple. This is how it looks. Today we have a solution which can scale up to 20,000 servers in one data center, as if they are connected on one single device. So this is how the network has evolved. Earlier, there used to be a 3-tier architecture. Juniper brought it down to 2-tier architecture. We still do it for smaller scales of data centers, where we have core and the access layer, top of the rack switches. Then we have the new technology, which is being deployed at Google, Facebook, and so many other clients. One-to-one. Each and every device, each and every server is connected to every other machine on a single hop, as if they are connected directly. No one else is offering this kind of solution today in the market. And that was all that I was here to present. So,
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vikas. Yeah, I think that's. What I'll do is I'll get Mr. Pandey, Presto Info Solutions, to present his views. Then we can start with the government panelists.
Good evening, friends. Thanks to Bidas on the chair. Principal Secretary IT Haryana Mr. Malik ji, Secretary IT AP Sanjay Jaju ji, CMD TCL Waklu ji, SIO JNK Mr. Abhay Kumar, and Mr. Vikas from Juniper Network, and Shri J. Satyanarayan ji, Secretary Department of Election IT. Good evening to all of you, dear friends. As you know, we are here to talk on the eGov issue, challenges, opportunities. When we say eGov, it is basically, you can say it can be a tool from where by which the term government or the governance part can be ruled up. If we want to define it, or the ultimate goal of the eGov, by which we can visualize the impact at the last mile or the last user, maybe Bharose Lal, Ram Lal, anybody else, is, you can say in very, very simple words, it is a transition. eGov is a tool by which we can transit the governance from My Baap Sarkar to Sarkar Aapke Dwar. It's kind of transition by virtue we can do that. So it is a basic concept where all eGov or whatever we are doing, different kind of IT tools, equipment, process, procedures, projects, which we evolved from that. When we are telling eGov, it is a major initiative from Department of IT and other state governments, fellow departments. Pillars are the infra projects. When I'm saying infra projects, is it part of MMP programs under NEGP and bigger ground of e-Bharat program of Government of India. When we talk about the infra projects, it is, we all know SWAN, SDC, CSC, e-District, CCTNS, EPDRP, e-Passport, etc., etc. Already we have discussed the implementation part of this. We all know how these projects has been envisaged and implemented time to time. When we talk about the challenges, where we had got wrong or what we are facing right now during the implementation or execution, all we can say, it's basically individual driven instead of system driven, instead of institution driven. We will say, I think most of us has felt somewhere, if some particular has been transferred, some particular officer has been transferred, impact of that particular project or speed of that particular project or the institutionalization of that particular project has been missed or failed or somehow derailed. So when it is an individual centric, so there is a missing of standard operating procedures. SOP is missing. Then another thing we are finding when the project has been implemented, non-uniformity of the data. If you will say any state government or any department, if you will go to the website, you will find a particular, might be a state name, district names or village names, city names in different fonts, different spellings, even up to population or the data which can be, which we can very well, synchronization can be done. If you will see on the different websites of any particular state government, you will find different data for a same subject. So I think uniformity is missing. These are my observations. Maybe it can be elaborated. So alignment is required. Uniformity is required. And most important, I think, absence of a tool or a methodology by which we can visualize, we can scrutinize the impact of the project. It has been scrutinized that, okay, we will buy the computer, we will do this application, and this can be eradicated or this can be done. But ultimately, at the end of the project, we had bought the equipment, we had run the application, but impact is missing. So what I will do in my few words, there should be a tool, there should be a methodology by which social audit can be done. We are doing the projects, audits are there, but it is for what has been envisaged at the starting of the project, what you are supposed to buy, or ultimately what we have landed to buy our application. But I think another audit is also required, social audit, by which we can visualize ultimately aim of the project, for which it has been envisaged at the starting or the initial stage, it has been achieved or not. When I'm telling all this or making out the problems or challenges, it's, I think absolutely you can say that if discussion on a problem without solution is a bigger problem, or you can say generation of a bigger problem. So as I suggested, social audit, uniformity, regular monitoring, maybe the time-bound progress of the project, or by virtue some mechanism by where official can be asked to be for a particular tenure, posted for a particular tenure, so that it can take care of the project in totality. Regular monitoring, if as the Government of India is telling, we can recommend it, if it can be regular monitoring through, by which travel is not required, it can be done on the VC, or a platform by virtue of regular or a time-bound kind of thing, voice as well as regular conferencing by where it can be targeted on the monitoring part as well, apart from auditing. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pandey. In fact, you very rightly observed that it's important that e-governance projects, wherever they are taken, any department, they are institutionalized. They should not be champion-driven. And the biggest bane of most of the e-gov initiatives have generally been that the moment champion leaves that particular post, the intensity and the momentum fritters away. And I would like to give a word called critical mass. I mean, it's important that a project achieves a critical mass so that it becomes absolutely impossible for even the worst successor to undo that particular project. And I also like to tell you that, friends, public-private partnerships and they're talking about these user fee models. To my mind, these are really good, sustainable models. For example, even in the MeSeva project, it's a completely user fee driven project. So sustainability is assured. There are multiple stakeholders. There's a village level entrepreneur, the person who runs the MeSeva center. He has a huge motivation because he knows that every transaction he does, he makes some money. And I think this is what drives projects like this. And when I mention public-private partnerships, they're important because we have to be very clear that the capacities are outside to deliver the outcomes, to deliver the projects of the kind that we have envisaged in eGov space. There are a lot of capacities outside, so there has to be a marriage between the government on the one hand and the private sector on the other hand. So lot of models of public-private partnership in e-gov space are generally being implemented across the country. And we have taken the views of two private sector companies on what they think of the e-gov challenges and opportunities which are there. Now we'll come to the first to the government side. I'd like to hear from Mr. Abhay Kumar, who is the State Informatics Officer from Jammu and Kashmir, and we'd like to know what they are doing in Jammu and Kashmir in this particular space.
Good afternoon, friends. Actually, before coming to the actual topic, that's issue, challenges and opportunity in context of the J&K, which are being discussed by the various dignitaries in one shape or another. Since yesterday, I would like to just mention the resources, infrastructure available with NIC J&K, which we are giving the various services to the government of Jammu and Kashmir, and various e-governance projects implemented by the NIC J&K for government of Jammu and Kashmir. So we have our state center at Civil Sector Jammu. We have the NIC Move office, Civil Sector Srinagar, which remains functional only for 6 months during the move period. We have our offices at each district headquarters, High Court Jammu, High Court Srinagar, and at Raj Bhavan. So connectivity, NIC is providing the connectivity to the various government offices of Jammu and Kashmir under the project NICNET. We have given connectivity to all the district headquarters. 34 Mbps connectivity is available as on to date, and it is going to be get extended to the 100 Mbps. The remote districts like the Poonch, Kargil and Doda are also connected through the VSAT based connectivity. Connectivity to the post offices, police stations and the various treasuries have been extended from the nearest NIC district center, whereas we have also provided the connectivity under the project NKN to the 15 institutes. NIC also has having a data center at Jammu, having the capacity of 7 terabyte. So 5 web-based application hosted, we have hosted the 5 web-based application for the different departments of government in Jammu and Kashmir. 33 number of the high definition video conferencing studios has also been made operational. As on to date, since beginning of the year, we have conducted more than 500 VC sessions for 500 hours in this year. NIC is also providing the web services for the domain registration, security audit, website remote publishing training, and tender publishing. The major e-governance project the NIC J&K has implemented for the government of Jammu and Kashmir is a transport, that's the Vahan and Sarathi, e-municipality, the computerization of the director roles, e-procurement, e-court, GPF computerization, e-health and NCATS for health sector, computerized energy bills for the PDD, EPDS, NADRS, public grievance, citizen-centric based services from the district centers, IFMS, that is e-treasury, and the budget distribution system. I'm coming to the actual topic, that's called issues and challenges being faced. This is in context of the J&K. So, as rightly pointed out from since morning, the e-governance is not the only or even the primarily a technological project. In my view, the primary challenges and the issues are how should we engage the user or beneficiary in service participation, public delivery, How can we incentivize the government servant to engage in service innovation and process change? How we can bridge the gap between online services availability and the observation capacity of the user? How can we encourage coordination and collaboration among the public agencies to share the information and infrastructure across the government? These are the various issues. That's called building capacity for smooth implementation, the management of the complete project life cycle, the project sustainability, the localization of contents, citizen awareness. In the public participation, actually the educating user is one of the most critical issues that need to be considered and addressed during all the phases of the design and the implementation of the e-governance services for citizens. There is also need for the policy to motivate the citizen and make them too passionate to use e-services, as majority think this is to be a liability. All the departments should have the web portal having forms, policy, forums, FAQ and performance reporting system. This web portal needs to be sufficiently equipped with tools like bulletin boards, feedback. The other obstacles are the geographical distances. In case of J&K, the lack of the skilled, trained human resources and the lack of ICT penetration in remote areas. A good governance application will not benefit anybody in remote area like in J&K if there is no supporting infrastructure such as electricity, computers and connectivity. Another is the building facility and the infrastructure. For efficient providing of the e-governance services, we have to have a data maintenance, a proper power supply, resolving all the networking related issues, proper hardware and software installation, maintenance of hardware, defining the unified policies. It has been noticed that one of the key issues hindering the widespread adoption of the e-governance is the complexity of the procurement of IT equipment, software and services. Open tender focused more on commercial, ignoring the technology and expertise. Many times technically superior solutions are rejected because of being more expensive in an open tender environment. There is a need for the additional e-governance act because e-governance projects require a different procurement policy as it is the services which matter more. Again, in the context of the J&K, what we have observed, the regular transfer policy of the government is highly damaging for a proper rollout of the e-governance systems. There is a need to have a clear policy on the continuity of the personnel involved with IT so that system get implemented fast before they get obsolete. Institution building and organization, the capacity building should be carried out in a hierarchical manner and customized according to the level of user or the employee. There is also need to address the inter-department issues as they may be detrimental to the success of any project. Closing of the project, department should have in-house expertise who will take the project soon after its sign-off. This is true in case of the NIC. In case of the NIC, whatever the project we are implementing, but we never got the sign-off from the department itself. Connectivity. Again, providing the citizens are depending upon the fast speedy information download from the government services, then the reliability of the connectivity and the network is a big challenge, which needs to be addressed on the priority. In J&K, the BSNL is the only department who is providing the connectivity, which is not the reliable one. And all of the service players, they are having one way or another way, they are also dependent on the BSNL itself. Moreover, the low internet penetration, especially in the rural population, stop them from reaping the benefits of the e-governance. Enhancing technology penetration is the last mile in governance is a major priority. These are the key issues and the challenges which we are facing, but the opportunity in case of the J&K is high literacy rate in youth, especially women in J&K. Unsaturated market, providing a large play fields for the IT industry, opportunity of the learning from the experiences of the other states like Haryana, Himachal and Gujarat. This is what the Chief Minister has pointed out yesterday. Prevalent peaceful atmosphere after nearly 2 decades of the turmoil in J&K has created a conducive environment for the investment in ICT projects. Last but not the least, the much greater awareness and the interest towards adopting the ICT culture in government's department across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abhay Kumar, for giving us insight into the e-governance space in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Friends, as far as e-governance issues are concerned, one point which has been flagged by Secretary also, and I'd like to repeat that, is the measurability of the outcomes that we want to achieve through the e-governance projects. Now, there are a lot of projects, and how do we measure the number of transactions or the number of services that we want to deliver? What are our touch points? What are and how many of those touch points we have improved by making use of the information and the communications technology? And I'll get Mr. Vimal Vaklu to give his perspective on the e-governance issues, and he's the Managing Director of TCIL.
Thank you, Chairman. Dignitaries on the dais, off the dais, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity of sharing my views with you. Well, broadly, Mr. Jaju, Mr. Abhay Kumar, they have covered the broad issues, the challenges and opportunities. Now I'll talk more from the perspective of a telecom perspective, being a telecom man. One of the challenges mentioned by Mr. Abhay Kumar was about the connectivity. Yes, connectivity is a major challenge, not only in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. I would say it's a challenge all over the country. There are about 637,000 villages, and not all villages are connected with. Any problem? Okay. Now it's okay? Yeah. Not all villages are connected by broadband. Now, the good sign is the government has already initiated a process of connecting the first 250,000 villages, 250,000 villages out of this. That's more than 1/3 would be covered in this phase, and we expect that by March 2014, we'll have all these villages more than 100 Mbps of data available, and that is going to be a big enabler for the e-governance services. Yes, it's a challenge at present. Besides this, there is another development that's happening in the telecom field, that is the 4G networks. 4G networks have already arrived in the country, and they are being deployed. And by virtue of being environment friendly, green, because just 20 watts of input power, there is every possibility that there will be more potential in the villages as compared to the major towns. So these need very small infrastructure. You can put a base station on a pole being 2-inch cube, and besides this, the power requirements are so low that you can meet with the solar energy, because power is another challenge in villages. So these two things taken together, I'm sure the connectivity, which is a major challenge, will be addressed. Second one, about the infrastructure in silos. This has been talked about now and earlier also during the day. That is a challenge, and here also the government has taken a good initiative. The government, the Ministry of DIT is working on national information infrastructure now, and I think one of the main objectives is filling the gaps and adding infrastructure for scaling it up. That is the second point where there will be an integration, and with cloud computing, the existing silos also can be integrated through this particular network. We have already talked about capacity building being a challenge. And then coming to other opportunities which lie there, there are a lot of applications which can run on these networks for e-governance applications, and there is a lot of opportunity for the industry to handle that. The ones that at present, many people here must be aware that for the postal wing, there is a plan for having handheld devices to the postman. And it's not something on paper, it's getting implemented. A postman is a friendly guy and at the same time could be notorious also. In some parts of the country, postmen throw mail just into the gutter to avoid going to each and everybody's home. And in some cases, postman is supposed to be a friend because he even helps people in reading the letters wherever the challenges are. Now, how to ensure compliance? So these handheld devices could, ensure, because they are GPS enabled, he goes to the village, and from the village, he not only takes the signature of the person to whom it's delivered on the same device, which is transmitted electronically to the main hub, and which can be monitored on a continuous basis. He also, in case the house is locked, he can take a photograph of the house and it can be transmitted back so that it's ensured that he had gone to the place and he did not return letters just for the heck of it. So similarly, similar arrangement for the railways, where people, generally the passengers are held to ransom by the TTEs. There will be transparency there. They also will have handheld devices which will be online, and they can't bluff that no, there is no place available, or he can't overcharge, undercharge, because whatever he charges has to be through the same device. Similarly, other location-based services, but of course for location-based services there are some challenges. The challenges being the GIS mapping. That has not been completed for the entire country. In many locations, yes, people are ahead, as Mr. Jaju pointed out in the morning also, but many areas, they need a lot of it to be done. There are many challenges which we can address through e-governance, but there are some challenges which still e-governance has. Like when we talk about certificates, yes, it's good to have digital signatures, everything can be done. But how do we prevent fake certificates? The certificate can be issued to A person. How can we prevent B person from utilizing that? Here there is an opportunity. It can be done maybe through non-clonable devices attached to each certificate, wherein the person who is authenticating, is verifying the certificate, will get a complete display of the person on the screen itself. So he knows that he's getting the certificate from the right person. So there are many such opportunities, and with that I would like to once again thank the organizers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vimal. And I think all of us would agree that a backbone of any eGov initiative would depend on connectivity. And we do have our own challenges in terms of connectivity, but the National Optical Fiber Network project, which is going to bring in broadband connectivity to every Gram Panchayat in the country, I think that would be a game changer. That would not just bring economic prosperity, but at the same time would also provide us the essential link to all the villages. And I think the citizen services would, in the real term, would really be available at the doorsteps of every individual in this country. Now I'll come to the last but not the least. I'll get Mr. Malik, who is the Financial Commissioner and the Principal Secretary for Electronics and Information Technology, and with his rich experience with the government, I'm sure we'll get a very different perspective on what are the challenges and the issues involved.
Thank you, Sanjay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we had a feel of what e-governance can lead to, with 2 slides having been shown by Sanjay when we started with this session, where Mi Seva has taken to the doorstep of the person. That is what one looks towards, that we are able to reach out to the citizen with a very wide sweep and a scope, both in terms of services as well as the coverage of people. As we said in the morning also, and I say it with a lot of credit to some of the southern states in particular, that the north-south divide in adoption of ICT is highly visible. South is actually the north and north is actually the south, if I may put it like this, if that is what we assign the meaning to. I think one of the reasons that I also look at is a mass-based IT literacy in South is visibly marked as compared to North. And an expectation and a demand also came from the public. While on the one side there was eagerness to meet all those expectations, a demand also arose from the public, which mass IT literacy is yet to be seen in the northern states. I think that becomes a pressure building group in delivery of services in the e-mode. When we look at it so far in our experience, NIC has done a wonderful work. All credit in initiating e-governance. But 2 handicaps that it led to. In all the government departments, they started lacking the ownership of any e-governance initiative. They started saying, "Ye to NIC ka kaam hai." I think that is one of the negative aspects. No project can succeed unless it is driven by the owner. And that is where it makes a difference, as Sanjay said very well. The critical mass of a project is achieved by the project leader. If the leader changes midway and the successor leader doesn't have the same level of commitment, the project suffers. NIC had that handicap, had that constraint. On the other hand, we have not been able to provide that kind of capacity in the line departments to think in terms of going the e-governance way. This has been another challenge. Now, I look at it that the entire e-governance side, all of us talk about it that the focus is on delivery of citizen services, which means, like my chief secretary also would tell me, I want first a solution which covers or affects the maximum number of people, citizens. What I also look at is that unless you have a end-to-end computerization of the functioning of a department which is driven by a committed ownership, these services will not come in the optimal manner. The governance itself, because it provides, it leads to the delivery of services, and that is what is going to remain as a sustainable model. That's what I look at it. The challenge today before us also is not only that there is reluctance or the variable at which these line departments are taking up or taking to e-governance for different reasons, is also these solutions or these applications being treated as if these are standalone applications in silos, lacking the requisite interoperability. We are looking at cloud as a solution in terms of the ICT infrastructure and optimized use, but if one application is not able to speak to or interact with the other application, then these are also standalone silos. I think that is another issue which has to be addressed simultaneously, that all of these applications have to be interoperable. In terms of capacity, various states have taken various measures. We looked at it that we should also have a IT cadre. Having thought about it, having prepared the IT cadre rules also, finally we decided not to go ahead with it. Because what happens, anybody who comes as a part of the regular service cadre professionally ceases to grow. That is a major, major challenge. So any IT capacity setup needs to have a mix of 2, 3, 4 persons as a permanent regular staff of the department, but simultaneously induction of people from the industry who bring in the latest technology and knowledge in management and meeting those challenges. These are some of the e-gov management challenges which we are certainly facing. The kind of support which has been given by the Government of India and the ICT community. As a matter of fact, no state would go ahead with data centers or SWAN or others if Government of India were not coming forward like this, at least in our part of the world. I would also request NIC to take a call now on it. They are still doing a wonderful job in terms of their spread in the districts, because that kind of coverage is not available anywhere else. But at the head office, I think NIC's capacity and capability has to be enhanced to provide ERP kind of solutions rather than standalone isolated small applications. This is a must if we really want these applications to talk to each other and eventually achieve the objective which we want to achieve through the eGov. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And just to add to what Mr. Malik mentioned, yes, in South India, the expansion of, I would say, the massive expansion which happened with the engineering colleges mushrooming in various parts of the state. I mean, for example, Andhra Pradesh as a state, we have more than 700 engineering colleges, produce more than 250,000 engineering graduates every year. And I don't think there's a family in coastal Andhra Pradesh where they don't dream of sending their kids to United States for higher studies. I mean, that's a level of, but I think the advantage which Andhra Pradesh actually had was the early movers advantage in terms of the governance space. And I think all the southern states possibly can be credited with moving early on most of these matters. One more thought before I leave the field open for quick questions and thoughts is the district e-governance societies. Now, whatever we may talk of at the highest level, unless and until we decentralize this entire process, the penetration and reaching out to the citizen will never happen. So for that, this strengthening the district e-governance societies, which are headed by district collectors, and putting in capacities in the district e-governance societies, giving them financial independence. In the MiSeva system, we transfer the part of the user fee that we collect directly into the district e-governance society. Because of this, what has happened is a lot of this infrastructure and local level troubleshooting is happening in most of the districts. And MiSeva being a completely homegrown initiative, it's been evolving, it's still evolving. And when the district e-governance society takes ownership of projects like this, then you keep improvising upon and tweaking a particular service or changing a particular pattern, and it helps projects like this to become better over a period of time. So to my mind, decentralizing this entire effort would go a long way in improving the penetration of the eGov projects. Friends, we have heard the industry, we have heard the communications partners, you have heard the government. Now the field is open to you. Your thoughts, your suggestions, or quick questions if you have. And please introduce yourself and shoot. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Selva Kumar. I'm from CDAC, Bangalore. We are right now in J&K implementing this SSDG project for rollout of services. And as all the panel members have said, some of the critical issues have been ownership, and particularly another thing is multi-stakeholder nature of these projects. You have the line departments, you have the implementing agency, you have NIC, the IT department, DIT. So what happens is not everybody knows about what a particular project is about. Everybody has their own idea of what it is going to end up with. So in the process, as an implementing agency, we have our issue that we have to, it becomes our responsibility to educate. So I don't know who actually takes that particular role of saying, okay, these are the kinds of things that would be the outcome of a project. And based on your past experience in Andhra Pradesh, would you be able to give some guidelines as to how a person goes about doing this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fact that in most of the eGov initiatives, the biggest challenge is ownership and the departments and their willingness to adapt to change. I would think that strong political and administrative leadership at the top, which is driving that particular change, is absolutely essential. People may say that it has to evolve from bottom and stuff like that, but unless and until the top leadership provides backing to what you're proposing to do, it becomes absolutely impossible. Who is going to talk to you? I mean, I'll just give a small example from the MiSeva perspective. Now, bringing in technology, trying to create centers, making use of the IT infrastructure, all these are givens, all these things are available everywhere. But why should a department listen to us, listen to an IT department? It happened in Andhra Pradesh because he drove it from there. He drove it right directly from the Chief Minister's office. And then you get the political masters also understand the value of this. So all this becomes very significant, because then departments start reacting to the solutions that you're trying to offer, and then they become a part of the overall process of evolution of an eGov project. So to my mind, strong political administrative leadership at the top, which is driving the change, is actually a sine qua non condition for any IT project to prosper and develop. It cannot happen. I think you can't do things without a leader, and I don't think eGov projects are any exception. You need to have strong leadership which is driving and propelling these projects. Can we have somebody? Yeah, you were.
Sir.
Please introduce yourself. And
Sir, I am Sanjeev. I am from Nixi. I am looking after projects from Jammu Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, and Government of Delhi, as well as Ministry of Finance. Sir, what I could find from the panel views that it is not the major issues in deploying e-governance is not the technology, but the change management. Change management not only in the sense of cultural change like Jammu and Kashmir and like backward states like some eastern states in India, like from where I come to, as well as operational change, as well as workflow processional change. For example, if secretary changes, that very project dies immediately if the successor is not able to just move it ahead. So, Sir Malik sir has rightly told that if the operational change is very much required, but it will come not on its own. It requires some legal changes, change in procedures, as well as some other changes that it requires. My major question is that, are we thinking in the direction to bring changes? For example, just I am giving you one latest example. I was going through the project of only few months back of custom and excise in Delhi. I had to send one form to them, but I got the information that they are in need of ink signed paper only. I sent through scan copy, but it was not accepted to them at all. I had to struggle for 4 days to convince them, sir, it is as good because it is being sent by the government or government-owned, email account. So it must be accepted to you, but ultimately they did not accept it. I had to send through courier a ink signed paper. So, sir, are we thinking in the direction that can we change all these procedures? Because, sir, just I told you, Malik sir has rightly told, it requires a change. Okay, are we doing something in this direction? Thank you, sir.
Okay. Let me share one thing with you. Any e-governance project is like the life cycle of your child. The child is born, your first effort is to give a sound health to your child. Then you take steps for preparing the child at every stage. So let's not say that technology is not important. Initial preparation, BPR, a leadership to take it forward, enabling sound technology and delivery. It's a complete life cycle of a project, and each part is equally critical in that life cycle. That is one. Second, as you said, one person, a scanned copy or a PDF copy is being mailed from an authentic email source or account to another, and that guy is not accepting. In this world, we have all kinds of characters, me and you. There is something called Maina, in Hindi we call it Maina Manu, which means whatever you do, I don't care. So you have people with that attitude also. And that doesn't require a change. He will automatically change because either he might get a boss who says, what the hell are you? If you can't learn opening it, you better get lost from here. Or something else will happen. So these are very, very temporary kind of things which do come as bottlenecks. What is most important is whether you are able to take your organization and its involvement and commitment to the project. That is the most important thing in taking it through. I have also seen where a project faces difficulty because proper architecture was not there, proper design was not there. So every stage goes through. It is not necessary that every process needs a legal change. We find a way out. Where it becomes absolutely essential, we flag it for future. That doesn't mean that till that legal change takes place, we are not going to do it. We'll continue with that, and that is what is called as the scalability, that we expect certain thing to happen. Today, if we are thinking of a commercial taxes project, if I don't keep it scalable to meet the challenge which is going to come or the changes which are going to come with the GST, I think I'm the biggest fool on the earth when we are seeing the writing on the wall that GST regime is in the offing. I think that's how I look at it. It's a challenge at every stage, it has to be met.
Sir, I do agree with you. One thing, sir, I would like to also say that in NIXI, we have just moved to ERP solution, and within 6 months, you can find out the status of your project in your state, in your home even. Sir, whatever project you do, just give to NIXI, you will get the status after 6 months, because sir, we are moving to ERP solution. So after 6 months, sir, I assure you that you will get all kind of information on your home page.
In fact, one more point, just to add, see, it's the strategic management of change. I mean, it's a management jargon, but I think this is what is very important when you're running through an eGov project. And you have to devise tactics for doing that, because if you're, for example, let us say, delaying a particular process, you're allowing time for the vested interest to come up, and they will try and bring all these small issues. They'll create bottlenecks. They'll get some press articles written. Even on MeSeva, even today, we get press articles written on the front page, because we know that these are being written, these are being given by the vested interest. They're paid for those articles. And they keep writing all that. But what you have to do is take all that in its stride. Don't allow them time. Speed, sweep, create a wave approach. For example, if you keep doing it on a pilot basis, that one district at a time, 2 services we'll add today, we'll add some 10 services later. If you do that approach, you will have a lot of these devil's advocates who will start playing around and then create problems for you. You don't give them that time. In MeSeva, we've rolled out from 1 district to all the 23 districts in our state in 3 months' time. From 10 services, we have moved to 140 services in just about 8 months' time. And now we are going to be moving to 300 services in the next 8 months. So we are not giving any time to anybody. And there are issues. I mean, we keep changing. I mean, even though we launch a service, at least it takes us about 2 to 3 months for us to keep improving upon that service. But by that time, the service is already launched. It's already come into the stream. And once it happens, it becomes very difficult for you to roll it back. Now, for example, you're used to a railway reservation system. Now, nobody can roll it back because the citizen already got used to a particular system which is better, but they are the ones who are going to drive the agenda for you. I think this is very important in terms of the change management. Don't allow the time to your opponents. Yeah.
Sir, my name is Shafqat Bashir. I head SCMT in JNK, sir. So my question is to you, sir. So you talked about empowering the DEGs by giving them a share of the revenue, sir. So can you give me some more insight into that, and what else have you done to empower DEGs? Thank you, sir.
See what, number one, you have to constitute DEGs, create district e-governance societies, create a complete mandate for them, give them the job chart, give them the roles and the responsibilities, and then put right people inside. I mean, if, for example, you need to have the NIC people inside, you need to have your own district managers, or the local SCAs, the SWAN operator, all the stakeholders who are involved in that have to be part of the district e-governance society. But forming a district e-governance society is the easiest thing done. What you need to do is give it a lot of financial independence, so that they don't need to run around finance department for even small little IT needs. They are able to manage all those things at the local level. What we do as part of the MeSeva, as I mentioned to you, 7 rupees on every transaction is transferred to the district e-governance society. For example, we have done about 1.5 crore transactions so far. So technically we have transferred about 10 crore rupees in the last 7-8 months to district e-governance societies. Now district e-governance societies, each one of them has about 70 to 80 lakhs in their bank balance. They are able to pay the salary for the technical hand-holding persons in time, because we have converted all these IT staff which was there in the district collector's office or in the Tehsildar's office as the employees of the district e-governance society. Even the e-district manager whom we have appointed is also the employee of the district e-governance society. And they're not asking for small things. I mean, they're able to buy a scanner, they're able to buy a computer, they're able to get land done in their offices. So all this financial independence which is coming to the district, then they're taking ownership of this entire process. I think, and then you have critical departments involved in that. So it becomes like a state apex committee where you have 10 departments, chief secretary here guides all of them, pushes them to come to the MeSeva system. So they kind of they get hooked on to your kind of system, and it helps in monitoring. It helps in giving us better solutions. At the same time, you're having a forum which is actually talking about e-governance at a very basic level. In fact, now we are thinking that we should even bring it down. We should make divisional level, sub-divisional level. We should even go at the block or the mandal level and create these kind of units which would help us in the long-term sustainability of projects of this nature. I think we're running out of time now. So we'll have the last and...
I'm Sheikh Imtiaz. I'll be representing private sector Comtech. Here we have, like other states, the main success there is you have best run common service centers. And in one state there are 3-4 agencies who have the compulsion to offer one after other service so that the common service centers gets benefited as. But in case of my state, we have banker as an SCAs who has just given them 2 services. One is documentation of their documents and another is their banking transactions. With the result, though good infrastructure centers have been set up, but no services have been to them from last 2 years. And there's no competition. That is the only SCA in the state.
Which state is yours?
Jammu and Kashmir.
Okay, JNK, okay.
So one SCA running 800 centers, offering 2 services.
I understood your question. I'll just give you a quick answer.
This question is basically for Secretary DIT and this JNK IT department.
Yeah, but let me answer this. In Andhra Pradesh also, from 2008 till 2011, we had the CSC program. Do you know in how many CSCs were operational in our state? 230 odd CSCs were operational. There were 8 districts where we didn't even have an SCA. There were 4 districts where the SCAs actually ran away. And today you have a huge competition. You have 7,000 common service centers operational right now. You know, one quick observation here is, don't expect SCAs to create G2C services. It's impossible. If it cannot happen at your level, how do you expect an SCA to go around district offices and get G2C services? You will have to create a common framework, bring in more and more departments and give these services from, in our state we call him Director ESD. So he is the owner of all the services. We develop the services, we take our share out of that user fee that we collect from the citizen, which takes care of the development part, and then we give it to an SCA for him to give it to all the kiosks that are being run by them. So I think as far as the G2C space is concerned, we should not leave it to the SCAs. I love SCAs, the other freedom of getting in the B2C varieties and the B2B varieties or whatever else they can bring in. But I think we need to give all these services to them. And then only the kiosk will become viable. And strict monitoring of the kiosks, capacity building of the kiosk operators. I mean, that's also very critical. And I think this is an area where we should put a lot of onus on the SCAs and make them accountable for the capacities of the kiosk operators, make them accountable for the acts of misdemeanors by the kiosk operators, but don't expect SCAs to create a bouquet of services and run it for you. It's impossible. You will have to create it, give it to them.
Main question is you can create services once you have digitized data with yours. For in case of my state, land records have not been digitized. Funds have been lapsed from last 10 years. Every year the funds gets rotated. They have not been digitized. One, we don't have any digitized database. So what service we can offer to them?
So that's what, I mean, see.
That's the biggest part we have.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, see, it's not as if services can be developed out of thin air. There are a lot of essential prerequisites before a service comes to a development stage. But what I'm saying is, that job has to be done by us.
Yes.
So we cannot expect an SCA to come and do that job for us.
Thank you, sir. That was indeed a very interesting session. We now have mementos for our speakers. May we have the mementos, please? I request our session chair, Shri Sanjay Jaju, Secretary of IT, Government of Andhra Pradesh, to kindly present the memento to Shri Yudhvir Malik ji. To Shri Vimal Baklu, Chairman and Managing Director, Telecommunications Consultants. Okay. To Mr. Vikas Utreja, Business Manager, Juniper Networks. To Shri Vimal Baklu, Chairman and Managing Director of TCIL. To Shri Abhay Kumar, State Informatics Officer, NIC Jammu and Kashmir. I can see a lot of popular hands there. And to Mr. J.P. Pandey, Senior Vice President of Presto Info Solutions Private Limited. Thank you, sir. And I request Shri Yudhvir Malik ji to present the memento to our session chair, Shri Sanjay Jaju. It's okay, sir. I request the speakers for a quick photo shoot, a group photo shoot. Sir, please come. Thank you, speakers. Thank you for your time and patience and for sharing your vision with us. Special thanks to Jaju sir for taking out time and coordinating the session so well.